Hi and welcome to Let's Learn 621, where we spread new learning to 6 more people each day. If you're new here, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more learning content each day. This is the first Malcolm Gladwell book I've read. His writing style is unique. Malcolm picks brilliant examples and first describes it as everyone would see it. Then he dissects it to reveal the hidden gems of knowledge. This video is a compilation of 10 such gems from his book Outliers, the story of success. Community. In 1882, 11 people from a small village called Roseto in Italy set sail to New York in search of new opportunities. By 1896, these 11 had invited thousands of fellow Rosetans and had set up a township just like their own, about 100 miles west of New York, where they farmed, raised cattle, grew grapes just like Roseto. They even named it Roseto. At that time, heart attacks was the leading cause of death in America, but very strangely, Rosetans were rarely affected till the age of 65. A physician called Stuart Wolf and sociologist John Brunn wondered why Roseto was an outlier. They spoke to people, did blood tests, drew family maps, looked at their dietary habits, genetics, and compared the findings against people from neighboring towns and cities. There was nothing different. The researchers found that Rosetans had created a powerful, protective, social structure which insulated them from the external pressures. They concluded that there was something magical about 3 generations living under one roof, sitting down to have dinner together, people walking down streets and having social conversations with one another, and the feeling of community when the womenfolk from the township worked together in garment mills. From his work, Wolf is acknowledged to have introduced a new dimension to tackle health conditions. Look beyond the individual and start considering the importance of social structure that the patient is part of. Canada is a hockey-crazy nation. Children start coaching at a very young age, and selection for national levels typically starts at the age of 9 or 10. Turns out, the vast majority of the top hockey league players are born in the month of January. The second most frequent month is February, and the third most frequent, any guesses? Yes, it's March. This is also the same trend for 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, and the 13-year-old squads. Let's stretch it a bit further. This was even the same trend for American soccer leagues. Hang on a minute, what's happening here? Well, it wasn't until the mid-1980s when a Canadian psychologist named Roger Barnsley first drew attention to this phenomena. He concluded that there's nothing magical in January or February. It's simply that the age cutoff for American and Canadian hockey is 1st of January, which means that children born in January and February are eldest in their cohort. At that small age, a child who has an advantage of being 9 to 10 months older than his group has a huge advantage. He has better stamina, he runs better, he scores more goals, therefore even gets more attention from the coaches and gets selected to play even more elite leagues and thereby the nationals. The term Matthew effect or accumulative advantage suggests that it is those who are successful that are most likely to be endowed with further special opportunities, thus leading to even more successes. Passion, talent, and hard work are all essential ingredients for success, but what you also need is a bit of opportunity, such as being born in January in Canada. Psychologist K. Anders Ericsson conducted research on the practice routines of the most elite academy of musicians, violinists, and pianists. They all started practicing at roughly the same age, but the top group within this elite group had been increasingly practicing more than others each year, with a single-minded approach to getting better. By the time this group reached their 20s, they had all amassed over 10,000 hours of practice. Ericsson concluded that there is very little role of innate or natural talent in being successful. Conversely, he also concluded that there is little chance that if someone puts in intentional hard work, they would not be successful. The magic number of 10,000 hours to gain true expertise holds true in all other disciplines: writers, skaters, chess players, and even criminals. Mozart's solo masterpieces emerged when he was in his 20s, when he had already been composing for over 10 years, or 10,000 hours. Not everyone will know Bill Joy, a tall, thin, exceptionally nerdy Berkeley graduate who was passionate about engineering. He was also lucky. He got admission into Michigan. Then they had just installed their time-sharing computer. Bill soon found out about it and fell in love. He coded night and day. By the time he had 10,000 hours of coding under his belt, he managed to reprogram the Unix operating system and had written most of the code that runs the modern internet. In the 1960s, a struggling high school rock band was invited to play in Hamburg, Germany. They held non-stop shows that started becoming popular with the locals. They got more confident, played all night long, 8 hours at a stretch and 7 nights in a row, 270 times over the year. By the time the Beatles hit the US in the 1970s, they had already been playing together for more than 10,000 hours. If you look into the life of Bill Gates, you will see he was exceptionally talented, passionate, and driven. But he himself recounts how lucky he was. As an 8th grader, he got the opportunity to do real programming on a time-sharing machine bought by his school. He got the opportunity to test out some software from a recently founded firm. The University of Washington allowed him to have computer time in exchange for him working on their software. Incidentally, the university had a free-for-all computer time between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning. Bill was there every single night. He'd get there before 3 and stay there till after 6 a.m. By the time he decided to start his own software company, he had been programming non-stop for 7 years and more than 10,000 hours. If you look at the list of the 75 most wealthy people who ever lived, you'd expect to see examples of kings and queens and pharaohs and czars and tycoons from modern industries. But what's really surprising though is that this list also includes 15 people from a single country who were born in the same generation. In fact, just within 9 years of each other, between 1831 and 1840. Hang on a minute, what's happening here? Well, the American economy went through the biggest ever transformation between 1860s and 1870s. So, you had it in and you were between 30 and 40 years old at that time, you had the opportunity to reform the world and also make a fortune for yourself. If you were any younger, you would not have had the right amount of experience. And if you were even a few years older, you would have missed the revolution. A similar example can be seen in the software world. If you were born between 1953 and 1955, you would be between 20 and 22 years old in 1975. This is when the personal computer was first released, making it possible for you to innovate in software. And if you had the right passion and determination and the right attitude, and had already put in those 10,000 hours of effort, you were bound to be successful. In 1921, Louis Terman, a psychologist from Stanford, started research on the most gifted children, prodigies or geniuses as we know them, in what became one of the most famous psychological studies in history. He sorted through 250,000 records to screen just over 1,400 children with significantly above average IQs. IQ is typically measured by convergence tests, where a student has to eliminate incorrect options to get to the most favorable response. Terman's cohort represented the top 99 percentile of students. They were expected to grow up and become the most successful people America would ever see. However, there was one major flaw. IQ meant very little on its own. By the time the termites reached adulthood, some of them were very successful, but the vast majority of them were just ordinary, and some of them were absolute failures. Turns out that the relationship between IQ and success only holds true to a point. Once someone has reached an IQ of somewhere around 120, having additional IQ doesn't translate into any measurable advantage. That is the threshold of intelligence. Knowledge of a boy's IQ is of little help if you're faced with a form full of clever boys. What actually helps is using divergence tests, where a student has to come up with imaginative ideas for using mundane objects like a blanket or a brick to get a perspective of an individual's width of knowledge and experience. So far, we have seen 5 of the lessons from Malcolm Gladwell's book. Keep learning with part 2 of this video. See you there.